Hey, it's Travis. This is another one of the quick code videos for Python. These videos are aimed at adolescent and adult learners. Like myself, I'm an adult learner. I'm also a teacher, and so I'm trying to make these videos to help people like me who are trying to pick up programming for whatever reason and are maybe struggling with the foundational stuff. So hopefully you find this an approachable video. I'm really aiming to keep this one below 8 minutes because although it's kind of a technical concept, the scope of the concept is pretty limited. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. So in this case, we're going to look at the scope of a variable. The big idea here is that any variable in Python has a scope where Python can see it. Outside of the scope, Python won't recognize that that variable exists or has any value, and it can cause issues, particularly if you're passing information in and out of functions or in and out of methods and classes, and you're trying to keep track of what a value is. Sometimes it can have one value in a function and a different value in the rest of the program, and you're trying to debug it. The thing you need to be looking for is maybe the scope of the variable. We want to keep the variable scope generally as narrow as possible for security and for other reasons, but that's way outside the scope of this particular video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the scope inside and outside of a function, and then how to get a value out of a function, which is kind of a review from the function video, but it is what it is. I think these concepts are so tightly tied together, it bears reviewing them periodically. So you want to keep track of where variables are called and especially when you're writing functions. Here's an example of this. I have the variable letter, which I assign the value A, the string A. And I'm going to print that letter. I'm also going to comment everything else out. And right here, I get my return, A, right? That's the console printing it out to me. The current value is A. That shouldn't be very surprising to anybody who knows a bit of Python. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a real quick while true loop just to show scope in and out. I'm going to have a new variable that gets set up called Avenger, and I'm going to have a letter, again, this letter. It's going to get a new value of Z, and then I'm going to print both of those. I don't need to use a while loop, but I thought with the indentation it might be a good idea just to take a look at it. So let's So here's the new value, right? I am printing the value of the letter variable, which is Z now, because I overrode it inside of my while loop. And then I also get the Avenger printing out, Hulk. So even though they're inside the while loop, I can still access them. That's okay within loops. For loops, while loops, if statements, then statements, match statements, whatever. That is okay for the variable. Where we need to be careful, and let me block that up again. I actually should be able to, no, it's not going to let me. All right, thanks VS Code. Where we need to be careful is when we start looking at a function. So functions allow you to duplicate code or pass things through code to do calculations or all sorts of crazy cool stuff, but they have their own scope. So when Python switches to look at how a function should execute, that's where the scope thing can get goofy. So in this scope check function, I'm not passing any variables into it here. It's just running on its own when I call it down here. Pop that out. And you can see there's no issues with it, right? What will happen? Well, I'm going to call the letter E, and then it's going to print the value of the letter variable is whatever this is, right? So the only thing that Python knows at this point is that letter is A, and then way down here on line 22, I'm going to call scope check. So let's run this. What do we get? Okay, now it says the value of the letter is E. That makes sense. Scope check tells Python letter inside the scope of this function is E, and then it's going to print it off. That's okay. But what if I uncomment this now? Calling the letter outside the function gives it the value what? What will it be? Will it be A outside the function, or will it be E, which was assigned inside the function? Run it and find out. Well, it says it's the value A because letter only exists in this form inside the scope of this function. So if I want to get that value out, I need to use the return statement. I need to say return the value of letter. But that's not enough, because again, if I run this bad boy, I'm still going to get value A, and I should be getting value E. And the reason for that is, even though I'm returning the value back to the body of the program, it's not assigned anywhere, and so Python essentially has amnesia, forgets what it's doing, and then just loses track. So I need to give it the variable assignment. And now I'm going to say the value of the letter variable, which is, it's a box, right? The value of the letter variable is whatever the outcome, the return is of scope check. So now if I run it, I should get here, down here on this particular print command, I should get whatever the value of letter most recently is, and that now will be determined by running the function scope check. So I should get that it's a value of E, and look at that, there it is, right down here. So calling the letter outside the function gives it the value E when I have a return statement that is passed back into the variable for that thing. The last thing to be aware of with scope is that if you define something like this in here, this will work just fine, right? Let me, let's see, I don't need to deal with this, and I don't even need this right now. I am just going to have it print out just this part. Villain Joker defined only inside the function. It doesn't exist outside the function in the main body of the program, but there is a print statement, and I'll get rid of return letter too, because that's just going to confuse it. And I should get the value of villain is Joker, right? But what if I now try to call print villain outside of Python, or outside of the function rather? I get the value is Joker. Oh, because I'm still, oh, there it is. Okay, I couldn't find it. There it is. So I'm getting an exception. It's thrown an error. Villain is not defined. But wait, you say, it's defined right here. Villain is the Joker. This is a scope problem. In order to get this out of there, I would need to define villain somewhere else, and I would need to return villain while passing it into something like, you know, villain equals scope check. Right, so now I'm passing the outcome, the return of the scope check function, into the variable villain outside the scope of the function, or rather in the main body of the program, and then I'm going to print it off. And I should only get Joker. So just to check that, I am going to comment that line out, and let's rerun the program. There it is, Joker, right? So if you don't have your variable in the right scope, it could throw exceptions and flag errors for you, and that's a bummer. But a lot of times, especially when you're beginning, it's because you started using functions and you forgot to return or didn't understand how to return a value. And really all you need to do is just start looking for, is my variable where I think it is versus where it actually is? That's a scope thing. So keep that in mind. If you appreciate the scope of this video, which is, just over 8 minutes, my bad, consider doing the subscribe and all those doodad things. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to help you learn. So that's it. This has been a quick coding video on the scope of variables, and I'll see you in whatever the next topic is. I don't even know. I'm just kind of picking them at random as I hear suggestions or see things. So, adios.